My male best friend of 10 years confessed he'd been in love with me right after I got engaged, then disappeared from my life. But months later, he sent me a letter that changed everything again. Jake and I met in college during orientation week. He was the first person I spoke to in our dorm, and somehow, we never stopped talking. We instantly clicked. Same sense of humor, same taste in terrible movies, even the same obsession with those overpriced seasonal lattes. Over time, our friendship became a cornerstone of my life. I wouldn't go as far as to call him my other half, but he was the person I called when anything happened, good or bad. We were always close. There were late-night food runs, impromptu road trips, and occasional sleepovers that ended with us passed out on the couch mid-conversation. People often assumed we were dating, and we'd just laugh it off. There was never any flirting, no weird tension. At least, I didn't think so. Jake dated here and there, and so did I. He even played the role of my fake boyfriend a couple of times to get guys at bars to back off. It was just easy with him. 10 years went by like that. From broke college kids to working adults, we stayed close even when life got messy. He helped me through a nasty breakup, moved my stuff across town when I got a new job, and once even drove 2 hours in the middle of the night because I had a panic attack. He never missed a birthday, never forgot a hard date. I genuinely believed we'd always be part of each other's lives, forever, in whatever form. I met Matt at a friend's game night 2 years ago. He was quiet but funny in this dry, effortless way that made everyone listen when he spoke. What started as casual texting turned into long conversations, dinners, and eventually real feelings. I told Jake about him early on. He gave me the standard best friend spiel. If he hurts you, he answers to me. But something in his tone was off. Still, I brushed it off. Matt and I got serious fairly quickly. We moved in together within a year, and 6 months later, he proposed. It was sweet, thoughtful, and everything I dreamed of. Naturally, Jake was one of the first people I called. His reaction? Oh, wow, that's fast. You sure this is what you want? I thought he was just being protective. He always had a skeptical streak. But as the weeks passed, his behavior got weirder. He stopped texting first, declined invites to double dates or group hangouts. When I shared wedding plans, he'd either change the subject or say something passive-aggressive like, "Guess I don't need to plan your birthday trip anymore." You've got Matt for that now. I started noticing little digs in his comments. "It's your life," he said once when I asked if the wedding colors looked okay. "But don't come crying to me if you realize later this was a mistake." I tried to give him space, thinking maybe he was just dealing with something on his own. But then he started sending these strange late-night texts. One read, "Do you ever think about what might have been if things had gone differently?" Another, "I feel like you're slipping away." At first, I chalked it up to nostalgia. Maybe he was scared of our lives changing. But then at a friend's birthday party, he got visibly irritated when Matt put his arm around me. Later that night, Jake muttered under his breath, "He doesn't deserve you," then brushed it off like he didn't say anything. A mutual friend later pulled me aside and said, "You know Jake's always been in love with you, right?" I laughed it off at first, genuinely confused. But when 3 different people echoed the same thing, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I realized I had 2 choices: ignore it and pretend nothing was wrong, or confront Jake and finally get the truth. I invited Jake to coffee one afternoon and asked him straight up what was going on. No games, no fluff. At first, he played dumb, said he was just adjusting to change, that maybe I was reading too much into things. But when I told him about the late-night texts, the weird comments, the whispers from friends, his face changed. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at me, defeated, and said, "I've loved you for years." I didn't know what to say. My brain scrambled to process his words. Jake, my best friend, my constant, my safe place, had been in love with me this entire time? He explained that he'd always thought maybe someday I'd look at him the way he looked at me. But I never did. And when I got engaged, it crushed whatever quiet hope he had left. "I know you don't feel the same," he said, "but pretending I was fine with just being your friend, it was killing me." I cried. I didn't mean to. I wasn't crying because I loved him back. I was crying because I hated that he had been hurting in silence, and I hadn't seen it. After that talk, Jake told me he needed space. Real space. Not just fewer texts, but total distance. "I can't watch you marry someone else," he said. "It'll break me." Matt noticed the shift immediately. When I told him the truth, he didn't yell, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He asked questions I didn't know how to answer. Did you ever have feelings for him? Would you have chosen him if he'd said something sooner? The truth was hard. I had never loved Jake that way, but hearing his confession did shake something loose inside me. Not romantic love, but a kind of grief I didn't know how to name. I missed him. I still do. Matt started pulling away, slightly too. Nothing dramatic, just little things. Less conversation, more suspicion. One night, he asked me, "Are you still thinking about him?" I didn't answer right away. That silence spoke louder than any words could. Jake and I haven't spoken in months now. He didn't come to the wedding. I left a seat for him at the ceremony. He didn't show. I mailed him an invitation with a handwritten note, just in case. No reply. Matt and I are still together. We're working on things. We started couples counseling to rebuild the trust that cracked when the truth came out. Sometimes I look at old pictures of me and Jake, ones where we're laughing over coffee or dancing like idiots at a party, and I feel that ache again. Not because I regret not loving him back, but because I wish the friendship hadn't been a lie to him. I wish he could have just loved me as a friend, the way I loved him. But now I understand. For some people, love doesn't come with an off switch. And maybe the bravest thing he did was finally walk away. TLDR, my male best friend of 10 years started acting distant and weird after I got engaged. When I confronted him, he confessed he'd been in love with me the whole time. It broke my heart. Not because I loved him back, but because I realized the friendship I cherished had always been something else to him. We don't talk anymore. I'm married now, but I still think about him sometimes. Not as a lover I lost, but as a friend I couldn't keep. Update 1. I didn't think I'd be back here, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. If you read my original post, you know the story. I had a male best friend for 10 years, Jake, who started acting strangely after I got engaged. I eventually confronted him, and he admitted he had been in love with me for years. It broke us. He walked away. I got married. The end, or so I thought. Well, it's not the end. A little over 2 months after the wedding, Jake sent me a letter. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter. 4 pages long, folded neatly. The envelope was plain, no return address, but I knew that handwriting immediately. I stared at it for over an hour before I opened it. The letter was beautiful, honest, heart-wrenching. He told me he didn't go to the wedding not because he hated me or Matt, but because he couldn't sit there and smile while watching the love of his life marry someone else. He admitted to crying for weeks after our last conversation. He said it felt like grieving someone who was still alive. He also said something that hit me like a freight train. I would have loved you forever if you had let me. Matt found the letter. I hadn't hidden it. I left it on the kitchen counter without thinking. When I got home from work, he was sitting at the table, holding it. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me of anything. He just looked tired. Are you still in love with him? He asked. I told him the truth. I never was. But I missed Jake, and reading that letter opened something in me that I thought had closed. A sense of guilt, grief, confusion, maybe even regret. Matt didn't say much. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed, barely touching. A few days later, I texted Jake for the first time in months. I thanked him for the letter, told him I appreciated his honesty, but that it was probably best we didn't talk again. He replied, I just wanted you to know. I never expected anything in return. Be happy. That's all I want for you. I cried. Again. Since then, I've been walking around in this fog. I love my husband. I do. But my thoughts keep drifting. What if Jake had said something earlier? What if I had noticed his feelings? What if I had allowed myself to imagine that possibility? Matt's been trying. He still holds my hand. Still makes coffee in the morning. But there's a tension between us that wasn't there before. It's not fighting, it's silence. And it's worse than shouting. I feel like I'm losing 2 people at once. One is already gone. The other is slipping through my fingers. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to stop grieving a man I never loved romantically. But I do know this. Jake's absence is a hole I didn't expect to feel this deeply. Update 2. It's been a few months since I posted that last update, and I wish I could say things have settled. But if anything, they've gotten messy, Matt and I have been trying. Therapy, date nights, open conversations. I've done my best to prove to him that I'm here fully. But I think a part of him is still waiting for me to say I made the wrong choice. I'm still thinking about Jake. I wish I could say he's wrong. A couple of weeks ago, we went to a mutual friend's engagement party. And guess who was there? Jake. I wasn't prepared. He wasn't either, judging by the look on his face when our eyes met across the room. He looked different, healthier, calmer, and he wasn't alone. He had a date, a woman named Sophie. She was kind, friendly, and surprisingly warm toward me. She said Jake had told her about an old best friend he hadn't seen in a while. Jake didn't ignore me. In fact, he came over to say hello. His voice was steady, his smile guarded. We exchanged a hug that felt like a ghost of the ones we used to share. Our conversation was polite, safe, surface level, but I felt like I was choking the entire time. At one point, we were alone for a moment, and I asked quietly, "Are you happy?" He hesitated for just a breath. "I'm trying to be," he said. "Are you?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Matt was watching us. Later that night, after we got home, he finally said what he'd been holding in for months. "Do you regret marrying me?" I said no, because it's true. I don't regret marrying Matt. But what I didn't say was, I'm still grieving what Jake meant to me. And I think Matt felt that in my silence. He didn't sleep in our bed that night. A few days later, Jake sent me a message. Just one line. "Seeing you felt like breathing underwater." I didn't reply. I didn't know how. I've been thinking about what love really means. Is it the quiet, steady support of someone who chooses you every day? Or is it the aching, unsaid connection that leaves a scar? Maybe both can be real. Maybe both can hurt. All I know is that I'm standing in a life I chose, but still haunted by a life that might have been. And I don't know how to move forward without betraying someone, maybe even myself. Final update. This will be my last update. I took some time away from everything, social media, my relationship, even my job. I needed silence. I needed space to figure out whose voice in my head was mine and whose was just leftover noise. Matt agreed to give me that space. He moved in with his brother for a while and left me the apartment. No ultimatums, no guilt, just space. He told me he'd be waiting if I chose to come back. I'll never forget that kindness. During that time, I wrote letters I never sent. One to Jake, one to Matt, and one to myself. The letter to Jake was the hardest. I wrote, "You are my heart's resting place." But I think part of me mistook safety for something deeper. I loved you, but not the way you loved me. And I'm sorry for every unintentional cruelty. The letter to Matt said, "You stayed, even when I didn't know where I was going. You loved me enough to let me go, just to see if I'd come back. And I did, because you're home." I met with Jake one last time. We talked for hours about childhood, grief, guilt, laughter, and everything in between. And then we said goodbye. Not the angry kind, not the dramatic kind, the real kind. The "I'll always care about you, but I can't keep bleeding for this" kind. We hugged. I walked away. I didn't look back. Matt and I are rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, with more honesty than we've ever had. We go to therapy. We talk about everything. Fears, doubts, the ghost of Jake. Nothing is off limits anymore. I chose Matt, and I'd choose him again. But that doesn't mean I don't still mourn the loss of Jake. Because losing your best friend, no matter the reason, is a kind of heartbreak that doesn't get a funeral. If you're still reading this, thank you. I don't know if I'll ever be fully over Jake, but I do know I'm learning how to carry both love and loss in the same hand. And some days, that's enough.